Harriet Kovak, born March 12, 1915, emigrated 1948, age 33, passage on the Normandy. Born and raised in Budapest, she took a vacation to America, met her husband, and decided to stay. It was a beautiful marriage, she said. I had a beautiful life with him. We had two beautiful children and a grandchildren. Unfortunately, I lost him 9 years ago. After the war, I was working as a file clerk in the American State Department in Budapest. I was a widow already. I lost my husband during the Holocaust. He was deported and never came back. And at a certain point in 1947, I wanted to come to the United States for a 2-week vacation. At the time, my sister and brother in law, who were American, were in Paris. They invited me to come with them to the United States. I had a passport, but I had no American visa. To get an American visa, you had to have an affidavit. There was no time for an affidavit, so I went to see the consul general, who I knew well. I told him my story. He was very nice, and he authorized the visa without an affidavit in my passport. I left Budapest and I went to Paris to meet my sister and brother in law. When I got there, they said, "Oh, our plans have changed. We're not going to America." I had no money to go by myself. After my 2 weeks vacation in Paris, I went back to Hungary and continued to work. But I still had that visa that was valid for 1 year for 2 weeks stay in the United States. So in 1948, I decided to go. I went from Le Havre on the Normandy, a beautiful French boat. 6 days later in June, I arrived at Ellis Island around 6 o'clock in the evening. But immigration officers didn't accept my visa because I had no affidavit. "You can't stay here," they said. "You have no affidavit." I was scared to death. There were two other women who had similar visa problems, and one man who was a criminal. He was taken away. The two ladies were also scared to death. I almost fainted because in Europe at the time, the reputation of Ellis Island was terrible, that it's a dungeon and they beat people up. It was a horror even to the name. I remember a woman, a matron in a white robe with a big bunch of keys at her side coming towards me, and I was trembling. I didn't see the other ladies anymore, and this matron suddenly said, "Are you hungry?" And I said, "Yes, I am." "The cafeteria is closed, but I can get you something." I said to myself, "This is Ellis Island? They are so nice to me. Eat whatever you want," and I did. Then they let me make a phone call to a friend. I came here with only $80 in my pocket. Because I did not have an affidavit, the immigration officer asked for $1,000 bail, which I didn't have. They were going to ship me back. So I called this friend. She was an American girl who worked in the American military mission in Hungary. I had her phone number in New York. I told her my story. She said, "I will be there tomorrow morning." The matron came back and guided me to a room where there were other women sleeping. She lifted up the corner of the bed and she looked at the sheet and said, "That's not clean." She changed the sheets and said, "Would you like to have a shower? We have hot water." She showed me the bathroom. I had a shower. It was unbelievable. Where was this horrible Ellis Island? I had a good night's sleep, and the next morning I had breakfast in the building that was the big hall, and naturally, I was waiting for that friend to bail me out. And she was smart because she had her ID that she worked for the military mission, and I had my ID that I worked for the American State Department. So they reduced my bail to $500. She paid the 500 and I was able to leave. Afterwards, I paid her back, and I'm still grateful for her. During my 2 weeks here, I met my husband, who was a very prominent lawyer. After I went back to Europe, I returned to America in December of 49 on a 3-month visa. My husband and I married quickly, otherwise, I couldn't have stayed here. We moved into a beautiful apartment on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. According to immigration law, now that I was a citizen, I was supposed to be able to get that $500 back. But the law said if you marry an American citizen, you have to leave the country and come back. That was the law. But I couldn't leave the country. I was pregnant, and I had a very difficult pregnancy in the sense that the last 3 months I had to stay in bed if I didn't want to lose the child. The doctor didn't permit me to travel, not even to sit in a car, nothing. So my husband, who was an excellent lawyer, asked for the $500. They didn't want to give it back to him. They said, "Your wife didn't leave the country. You don't get the money back." For my husband, it was not too much for the $500 of principal. Here was a woman who was pregnant and had to leave America. Can children not leave? Which is justified by doctors. Cannot move and don't give her back the $500. So we sued the government, not for the money, but for the principal. The lawsuit cost him thousands of dollars. I went with him to Albany and at least 10 times. Finally,